Good morning, Pennsylvania families. This is the National Center for Learning Disabilities second Advocate Academy in a 5-part series. We are doing an Advocate Academy 101 series, and this is all on assistive technology today. Why isn't this working? There we go. There we go. Oops. And I am having technical difficulties, so yay. Good morning. My name is Susan Reynolds. I'm the field organizer for NCLD. I am a parent to a little boy who has ADHD, and he was recently diagnosed with a visual motor processing disorder. My husband just recently retired from the United States Air Force, and so I used to advocate for military families because we moved so much, and so we were exposed to IEPs in various states and or countries, believe it or not. And I am also an adult with 2 learning disabilities and ADHD. Our parent leader is Dylan Davis. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dylan Davis. I live outside of Philadelphia. I practiced law for a few years and was unhappy and looking for a career change. So I got my master's degree in education and taught special education. And then my daughter came along, and then my son. And my daughter, we saw early on that she had some reading difficulties, and she was diagnosed with dyslexia, and we struggled getting her the services that she needed in the public schools. So that's kind of what's turned me into an advocate, and I'm the parent leader here in Pennsylvania. So thanks, I'm glad to be here.
While her information isn't here, we have a special guest. Her name is Amy Trainer. She is our Texas parent leader, and she actually has been an occupational therapist for, gosh, what, 20 years now, Amy? So I'm going to let you introduce yourself. And I'm going to tell everyone, she has the world's greatest Texas accent. You're going to love it.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I don't hear that when I'm here, but when I talk to all y'all from the East Coast, then somehow it gets heard. I don't know. So yeah, so as Susan said, I'm Amy Trainer. I am an occupational therapist and assistive technology professional. Have been practiced. I just finished my final year in the school systems, but to wrap up 20 years. I am still obviously an occupational therapist and assistive technology professional, but have kind of steered my career path a little bit to be able to better support parents and families and students outside of the school system, and letting to get the honor of being the NCLD parent lead for Texas, write a column for AT support for dyslexia about 11 years ago, almost. We had our daughter who a couple years ago was identified finally as being a student with SLD and dyslexia. So that was a real big pivot point for me as a parent and as a professional to really kind of recognize where the gaps were in our educational support system, and has kind of guided me where I am. But I'm real honored to get to talk about this topic. It's a real big passion of mine, being able to support students and individuals with disabilities and differences with assistive technology. So there we are.
Okay, well, let's get started, Amy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
right.
I'm just gonna let you take it away.
Okay. All right, yeah, I know. Just tell me to be quiet. You know, it's that Texas thing. Texas plus passion is like total control. Anyway, so let's talk about what assistive technology is. Okay, so in short, it's anything, right? It's anything, truly, any item, piece of equipment, a system, anything. Excuse me, no matter where it comes from. So it can be custom made, it can be directly off the shelf, it can come from Walmart, it can come from a med supply company, whatever. It can be changed, modified. So it's anything, no matter where it comes from, that helps the student do something that he or she cannot do without it, or it helps that student to do something that he or she could not do without it or better. I think I muddled that up. So assistive technology can help students with all their educational challenges, whether it's in an area of curriculum like reading, writing, math, or even another subject or area of self-help, or perhaps. Assistive technology can really support a student thrive, both in school and at home, and can totally support independence and confidence.
Amazing.
Is. So let's talk about, since we are kind of guided by the laws, right? What does that mean? What does IDEA say about assistive technology? Well, IDEA defines assistive technology as again, any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether required commercially off the shelf, modified or customized, that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capability of a child with a disability. So the key words there are increase, maintain, or improve the functional capability. All right. Well, in 2004, IDEA was revised to include the provision that all students who are both blind and with print disabilities, which would include dyslexia or other areas that prevent a child from accessing printed materials, which could even include a motor difficulty such as cerebral palsy that couldn't access and manipulate printed text. In elementary schools and secondary schools, that they have access to printed instructional material, including textbooks, in accessible format, free of charge.
Wow.
Yeah, I think yesterday when we were doing Texas, I forgot to mention that print disability it can encompass some of that motor component. So okay. That's another big key. So our next slide is we're going to talk about the 504, Section 504 and ADA. Section 504 and the Americans with Disabilities Act require reasonable accommodations to be provided for individuals with disabilities by schools that are receiving public funding. Assistive technology has made those reasonable accommodations much easier to achieve. But there is not a specific schedule for consideration or assessment for assistive technology under 504 or ADA Title II like there is with IDEA. So that's one of the kind of delineating points. ADA Title II specifically requires that a student with disabilities have the same opportunity to be as effective at communicating as a student without disabilities. People, students, individuals who have disabilities that affect hearing, seeing, speaking, reading, writing, remembering, or understanding may use different ways to communicate than people who do not. There are many ways to provide equal access to communication for people with disabilities, often referred to as auxiliary aids and services. These are devices or services that enable effective communication, of which assistive technology can be a part. Okay, so now we know a little about what it is. Why on earth is it so important? Well, we have a chart here that illustrates a study, the National Longitudinal Transition Study, that tells us and illustrates why it's important. When we're looking at the post-secondary outcomes for students with high incidence disabilities, and we talk about high incidence disabilities, we're talking about those that happen with a higher frequency, things like dyslexia, specific learning disability, attention difficulties. Those are the higher incidence disabilities. That's the 1 in 5, right? This study revealed that those individuals who received assistive technology performed significantly better than those not receiving AT. And when I put this chart together, it really does exemplify what the need is. So if you look at the chart here real quick, it talks about the outcome. What are our outcomes? Everybody's outcome with your educational process is to be a successful, independent, financially secure, contributing member of society, right? When you get done with school, what are our hopes? So we looked at graduation, or they looked at graduation. Those with assistive technology graduated with 99.8%. I mean, that's almost 100%. That's huge. I mean, that's great, right? But if they didn't have assistive technology, it knocked it down 20%. Post-secondary enrollment is half, right? Like, look at the number of kids that went on to any post-secondary enrollment educational system. And then those with a paying job.
Well, and Amy, if I can just jump in for a moment, we, as we know, we're getting ready to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And one of the areas that those who sponsored the legislation, those who advocated for the Americans with Disabilities Act, all say that one of the areas of the 4 components of the ADA that still needs a lot of work is the employment piece, the paying job, right?
Right.
But we need, so many of our children and adults need AT in the workplace, in the post-secondary enrollment, in this school system early on, so they can be part of that 80% of those with a paying job, not the 50%.
Right. Well, and you know, I've cited this because I think part of being a parent or an advocate or a parent advocate or whatever is making sure that you have the data that supports the decisions that are being made. You know, every decision truly should be data driven. What we're doing in the schools should be data driven. And this is one of those pieces that I think is so critical to be able to share with your student committee teams, that even in the early stages of education, when you have those students having the opportunity to learn how to use the supports, to become familiar, to become proficient before the demand is so significant academically that that's just one more learning curve that has to take place. But when you start and you do and you learn and you become proficient, it just is a natural part. So find the article, print it up, copy this slide, something, and keep it in your file.
Okay. Thanks,
So
Lainey.
this is one of my favorite reminders too, and I encourage you to keep this one at hand as well, is that the use of technology is not to take the place of direct and explicit instruction, but rather provide access to grade level and course curriculum while skills are being developed through explicit instruction. So that's the caveat with IDEA and special education, is that direct explicit instruction that is required. So this is not instead of, it's in addition to, that just helps make it happen with the access to grade level curriculum.
Okay.
So how do we consider assistive technology? What does that look like? Joy Zabala, she created the SET framework, which is a 4-part model that's designed to promote collaboration between all the parties making the decisions through all the phases: assistive technology consideration, what the service is going to look like, the assessment, the implementation, and the reconsideration as the child or student grows and develops, to make sure that it's effective and efficient for that person. So the 4 parts are S, student; E, environment; T, task; and T, tools. So AT, of course, depends on the individual student first. It depends then on where is that student and what setting, right? What's the environment look like? What are they being asked to do? What are the tasks that that student needs to accomplish, where they are, that they cannot do because of a barrier with a disability? And then also, what tools are already available, or what tools might be necessary to infuse into the situation to make that task possible. So when you're looking at assistive technology for a child, you really want to focus on that area or areas where the child needs the support, and then help and work with the school system to find the tools that work. It's also really important to remember that what works for one student doesn't work for all students, right? And even for what works for one student may not work in different settings. And it certainly, as that child's needs and skills develop, it's going to be kind of a fluid process, and that it will change. So that's one of my favorite things. People say, well, as an ATP, what do you think? And you think your first response is, well, it depends, because it does depend on a lot of moving parts.
All right.
Okay, so some good starting places. We just said, assistive technology is not a one-size-fits-all. There's not a one thing for this identified disability. So some of those things that are good starting places for students that struggle with reading. Text-to-speech. Y'all, text-to-speech, it comes in it looks different in a lot of different ways depending on how it's implemented. But the benefit of text-to-speech is that it reduces that cognitive load and increases the automaticity for a struggling reader. And what that does is it results in the student being able to not just gain how much they're reading, but it also decreases the fatigue and that stress. The stress is really big, what they're experiencing while they're reading. And it can be used with standard books, websites, ebooks, emails. There's different ways to deliver that text-to-speech component. Audiobooks, digital text-to-speech books, they're available in a lot of different places. OCR is a really cool feature, optical character recognition. What OCR does is it takes locked text. It's early. Think of like a PDF, right? So if you have a PDF, it's a locked document. You may have a picture, you may have some text. What OCR allows that user to do is to be able to take that text and to be able to read it as text, because it's presented in a different format than something that might be in a document or on a website. Use of graphic organizer, something as simple as a graphic organizer. Annotation tools that allow the user to make notes and highlight, comment, whatever, during the reading process. Being able to customize with display controls and change the appearance of the font or the background and the font color, or even just a dictionary or thesaurus, whether it's hard copy or electronic. So the students that struggle with composition, that whole spelling, composition, writing, some things that might be helpful include simple handwriting tools like just a little pencil grip, or maybe an alternative paper or a slanted writing surface. The use of a keyboard or a touch screen. Using dictation, the voice, right? Using your speech to produce the written text. Word prediction, spell check and grammar check. They're built into all of our word processing programs already and getting more and more refined every day. Using the text to speech, again, like we saw with the reading, graphic organizers and dictionaries and thesaurus. And these are just some examples, some good starting places.
Oops, I went too fast, sorry.
No worries.
Okay.
And then with math, so of course we have a whole variety of calculators. Some may just change the physical layout, the size of the keys, or it may provide some talking features from that calculator. Different math notation tools, graph paper, graphing tools, drawing tools, equation solving tools, use of manipulatives, whether they're digital manipulatives or actual tangible physical manipulatives. Again, graphic organizers to help kind of illustrate and break apart those problems for solving. Using text to speech, again, for composition and dictation.
Okay. And then, there we go, our next one.
Executive functioning, okay? So executive functioning, what is that? It's kind of a broad term that involves a higher level cognitive abilities that are necessary for independent, goal-directed behavior, for things like holding and manipulating information in your working memory, as well as planning or organizing complex tasks. So that's when you talk about being efficient in your schoolwork, it really relies on executive functioning, and some of our kids really struggle with that piece. So what are some things that might help a student with that? Maybe something as simple as a visual checklist, right? Have I done all the steps? Or using color coding system, different, maybe captioning, maybe a set of headphones that blocks out all the background noise and really allows you to focus. Here's some other ideas that might be considered. Okay, so we've included right here a slide that includes links to the information and resources that we kind of talked about already in this presentation, and that all the registered participants, y'all will get this slide deck along with the video recording. So you'll have all the hot links to be able to go back and explore and look a little bit more into the areas of interest.
Myths, we got to talk about them, right? And unfortunately, there are myths and misperceptions about assistive technology. I know I fell into one of them pretty badly and didn't even know I was until you shared with me, no, that's actually not correct. But one of the big myths I think parents are going to hear, and I think they already probably do hear, is that assistive technology provides a quote unquote unfair advantage for students with disabilities, but that's not true at all.
Right, right. Well, and like we said at the beginning of this, AT is not well understood, and it does depend. And so as a result, that does happen, right? Myths and misperceptions are just going to occur. So it's really up to us to help understand the differences and help articulate that. So like you said, unfair advantage, it's not an unfair advantage. What AT really does is provide that equity piece. It really, it levels the playing field for all of our individuals with disabilities.
Okay, this is the one that I fell into. AT is only high tech. Because, okay, so for me, it was like technology, right? So I was like, oh, if it's technology, it's assistive technology, it has to be some kind of app on a phone. It has to be, like a tablet or some kind of electronic device. Like I really thought it was only some kind of computer, technological, advanced, almost Star Trek-like stuff, right? And boy, was I really wrong.
Right. Well, and as we started out, it's anything, no matter where it comes from. So that could be that squishy pencil grip that helps make that writing process more
Of my
comfortable.
squishy pencil grip.
Yeah, more comfortable, or changes the dimensions or the diameter of the pencil to allow someone maybe with physical limitations to be able to hold and manipulate. To a note-taking app or a computer system or a communication device. The range is broad. It just depends on what the student needs. Exactly, or a reader, or the electronic textbooks, or any of those things.
Yep. AT can only be used in the classroom, which we know is not true. But that's a pervasive thought.
It is. And I think what we've experienced at the end of school and starting the school year again is really helping exemplify that that's not true. Whether you're talking about academic supports, which are, you think about only in school, but now they're in the home, we're learning at home, but then also helping you out in the community to support your independence, whether you're at a restaurant needing to read a menu, or signage to figure out where you're going to your doctor's appointment, or taking care of your personal hygiene out in public. It just doesn't, it's not limited to school. There you go.
And then the other misperception is that assistive technology is one size fits all.
Right. Well, no. Thank goodness, right? Because if we were all the same and only needed the same supports, this world would be really boring. But that's just where we have to remember that what works for one student in one setting may not work for other students, and it may not work for that same student depending on setting. So that's that ultimate, it depends. Thank goodness we're all independent people, and that's where that I for the individualized, we have to keep that in mind with what works for one student. This is that student's needs.
Okay.
Oh, and I love this one, this quote. So for most people, technology makes things easier. For people with disabilities, however, technology makes things possible. In some cases, technology becomes the great equalizer and provides the person with a disability a level playing field on which to compete.
So we know that all technology is not necessarily assistive technology, although some assistive technology has become mainstream, right?
Right,
so,
right.
Like audiobooks.
Right. So yeah, it's kind of the more and more prolific, if you will, that technology becomes infused into our lives, it becomes hard to determine, like mainstream technology, assistive technology. Really, that mainstream technology becomes assistive technology when we can link it back to that definition that we talked about in the beginning, when it maintains, increases, or improves a functional capability for someone with a disability. So assistive technology, it acts as a support to help that student overcome the barrier that they're experiencing as a result of the disability, and it provides educational and employment equity. I have these two questions here that kind of help think and consider and delineate whether something is mainstream technology for an individual or assistive technology for an individual. So real simple, what does the tool do for the student? And what would happen to the student if the tool was taken away? All right, and I have an example here to kind of help frame it in everybody's mind. Let's say you have a 5th grade class and they're using Chromebooks with word processing to complete a writing assignment. After practicing and getting familiar with the technology, most students in the class, even though they're proficient with word processing, will still be able to and probably prefer to go back and use a pencil and paper for writing tasks. But for some students whose disability does affect their ability to write, those students might need to use word processing for all of their writing tasks. So for those students, word processing software increases their functional capability in writing and is assistive technology for them.
Okay, that's a great example. Thank you, Amy. So, Amy, I just want to thank you. I know you're going to stick around and help answer some questions as soon as we're done, but we're going to go back to myself and Dylan for just a moment.
Take that back to Dylan.
Yes.
Thanks, Amy.
Yay! So we have some national resources, everybody. If you attended our first Advocate Academy, you know that we like to share, Dylan and I like to share national resources. And of course, we're going to put us as the first one because yay. because we're the National Center for Learning Disabilities. And then we have Edutopia, which I found had some really great information on assistive technology, but I really just like their information. The same is with Learning Disabilities Association of America. And Understood, I've said this before and I'll say this again, Understood takes really complex information and actually makes it understandable, which is why their name is Understood. But also it just breaks it down in a lovely manner, and we can actually we can actually digest the information. I found a lot of information on Reading Rockets about assistive technology. And again, every state has multiple parent center hubs. Believe it or not, you have quite a few of them in Pennsylvania. These are free parent centers, and they actually have on their website information about assistive technology. We have 2 places that we added this time that are different from last time, because these are specifically 2 national organizations that focus on assistive technology. Check out their websites, you can learn more. But again, as Amy mentioned earlier in the presentation, like last time, we're going to send out the YouTube link and we're going to send out the slide deck. But Dylan, why don't you tell us a little bit about these state resources again?
So PEAL, the Parent Education and Advocacy Leadership Center, is a parent help center that has information on a whole range of resources, including assistive technology. Their consult line is a direct dispute resolution and information line for families and advocates. There's HUN, the Hispanos Unidos para Niños Excepcionales, the bilingual parent help center. Mission Empower for those in Erie County in Western Pennsylvania. There's Disability Rights Pennsylvania that has a wide range of resources. Parent to Parent PA, the Learning Disabilities Association of America and the PA branch of the International Dyslexia Association have resources on, again, a wide range of resources, including assistive technology. Kids Together PA, the PIAC, Pennsylvania Education for All Coalition, and the Chester County Mainline CHAD, Children's and Adults with ADD, for those on the eastern part of the state. And even more specific with AT, with assistive technology, there's the Pennsylvania Department of Education Assistive Technology. That's the page, and it's the part of the PA, Department of Education, that deals with assistive technology. The PA Assistive Technology Foundation. Bataan, another parent help center, has specific resources on assistive technology. TechOwl, which that and the next one, Temple University, they're associated with a real big assistive technology program in Pennsylvania. And the PA Health and Wellness Center has many resources for assistive technology.
Y'all are really lucky, if I can jump in, that Patton. They are a
great.
phenomenal resource. I've been connected with them with my interest in dyslexia, and I mean, it is amazing the resources that they provide.
Incredible. Really
Amazing. I wish they were in every state.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I really do. I can honestly say yes. We might live in Virginia, but I know they are a very good and just very good organization. I love their.
I encourage people to check them out too.
Yeah. So please connect with NCLD because, well, we're fun. And I think we're great. You can follow us on social media. And I said this yesterday, I'm going to say it again today. I have not gotten our Instagram handle yet, but we are on Instagram. You can find us there. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. If you have general information questions, you can email us at info@ncld.org. Policy questions, policy@ncld.org. I don't have this like in a separate slide anywhere, but starting tomorrow, actually tomorrow is the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is a huge deal. It was a landmark civil rights legislation for people with disabilities. And as I have said before, the United States became a beacon of hope, in all honesty, around the world for people with disabilities. Our accessibility for people with physical disabilities, learning disabilities, you name it, we are a far more accessible country than quite a few other countries out there, believe it or not. And so tomorrow is the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And all week long, NCLD is going to host a week of action. We're going to talk about the events that led up to the passage of ADA, where ADA is at this moment, what our future is for the Americans with Disabilities Act. We actually have interviews with Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa, who was the sponsor of the ADA. Senator Casey from Pennsylvania is going to do a video because he is working on something called the RISE Act, which actually helps our students and our children population when they go from high school and they transition from high school into higher education and or just secondary education. And so he's doing a video for us. We will eventually have an interview with one of the advocates who actually advocated for the ADA 30 years ago. Her name is Judith Heumann, and she was actually part of the 504 work back in the 70s and part of the ADA work as well in 1990. So that is an eventual video we will be able to get. She's just obviously busy because she was there advocating, so we just couldn't get her right during our week of action. But please check out our social media. We're gonna have videos and blog posts and interviews. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's a huge celebration because it's a big deal. And as you guys can hear, I've been rambling too long about it. So that means I'm pretty passionate about it. But let me move on to our next Advocate Academies. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, for those who are starting to come into this I guess training session, is that what we want to call it? I don't know what to call it. We are doing a 5-part series. And since this is the assistive technology, there it is. I have hyperlinked the first one to an introduction to IDEA and section 504. This will, when we send out the slides and the YouTube link, I won't hyperlink it obviously to these slides, but when you come back for our third one, which is preparing for an IEP meeting, learning about evaluation reports, how to understand them, the various words and phrases and acronyms, understanding a little bit about goals and what that all means, going over a little bit about parental rights. We will have a YouTube link again for the assistive technology. It will be hyperlinked, and we will make sure you all get to see all of this information. Our purpose is to build on this, right? That's what we had kind of come up with, I think, Dylan, is we wanted to build and get a good foundation so that parents would have this information always at their disposal. Mm-hmm. Please keep it and reference it again and again. And if there are changes that happen to the law in the future, we'll let you know and make sure you get updated information. That's what we want to do. And then we're going to have our 201 series, which for those who are interested, we're going to shift a little bit. We're going to pivot our focus from advocating for our child in the school to advocating at your state and local elected officials' offices and more, right? How do you advocate for special education when, with your school board, right? Especially if there are no school board members who have a child with an IEP or a 504. So how do you do that, right? And so we're going to talk about that in two different kinds of advocate academies, where we're going to do state and local, and then we're going to talk about the big federal stuff, because IDEA is a federal law, as well as section 504 in the ADA. These are all federal laws and policies. So how do you take your story, take your experiences, and share them with your members of Congress? And yeah, so, and we'll keep you posted on those. I think those are going to be sometime November, December timeframe. I'm not really sure. The holiday season always gets kind of, I don't know, it's the holiday season, so it's always hard to do stuff, right? But that's it. That's us for this morning. So thank you, Amy, for being here. I'm going to take everybody, I'm going to take it off screen share if you guys can give me a minute, because I got to use technology again and I'm not great with it. And I know we have some questions. So
end your recording.
Huh? I got to end recording first. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Goodness. There we go. Yes. Right? Yes.